Hello and welcome to another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Jamie Johnson, and we are conducting the interview by Zoom, and I'm in my law office at the Lohman Abdul Law Firm. Our guest today is a candidate for District Attorney in St. Croix County, Karl Anderson. Karl, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
You bet. Well, it's that time of year. It's primary time, and normally we've got winter boots and caps on. We're talking about primaries for spring election, but this is primary for a fall election, which means that it's a partisan election. Actually, you're one of the Republican candidates, correct?
Yes, one of two.
And
Two only candidates.
And the primary is August 11. I'm old enough to remember when the primaries were in September, but they thought that was a little bit too close to November, so they moved them out to August. And so we'll have an opportunity. In addition to district attorney, there's also, I think, a state senate primary on the Republican side as well. So that will be two reasons for the voters to get out. So, Karl, we want to talk about your candidacy for district attorney. And before we get into issues, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and your qualifications?
So I'm originally from La Crosse, Wisconsin, and then my family built a house just across the river in Minnesota. I went to high school in La Crescent. After high school, I went to St. Cloud State University. I double majored in criminal justice and Spanish. Studied abroad for a semester in Concepcion, Chile. I graduated summa cum laude, and afterwards I worked for a couple years debating really between law enforcement, being a police officer, or prosecution. And I ultimately decided to go to law school to be a prosecutor. I got a scholarship to go to UW-Madison Law School. And so it was a no-brainer, in-state tuition, great tuition rates, and one of the best law schools in the country. So I went there. I did every single criminal law internship I could do. I interned for a federal district court judge, James Peterson. I interned for a state circuit court judge. I interned for the Wisconsin Department of Justice and the La Crosse County District Attorney's Office. I did a criminal law concentration and completed that with honors, which means I did pretty much every criminal law class they offered and got a GPA 3.5 or higher in those classes, so you get the honors with the concentration. About, I think, a week after I swore in, I started at the St. Croix County District Attorney's Office, and I've been here for over 4 years now.
Okay. So let's see, that was 2016 then that you graduated law school?
Yes.
Okay. Great. So you've been in St. Croix County, know some of the people and the policies and how the justice system here works. So we'll get into some of those. But before we do, I had your opponent, Rahan, talk a little bit about the fact that district attorney is a partisan office. It's been that way. It's one of those constitutional things in Wisconsin, but why it was never changed, I don't know. But do you see partisan politics playing a role in the district attorney office?
It shouldn't ever. I don't know, especially if I win. Politics should never come into a decision on whether to prosecute somebody or not. The district attorney has to apply the Constitution, the laws, and the facts of every given case and make a charging decision. And the goal is justice. It doesn't matter if the defendant or the victim is Republican, Democrat, third party. So politics shouldn't come into play. It's the law and the Constitution and the facts.
Okay. And so why Republican? Because, you could have run either party, or, do you have a background with the Republican Party, or?
Yeah, I joined the Republican Party pretty much as soon as I moved to St. Croix County. I've been involved with the party for a while now, and actually my involvement got my brother involved, and now actually he's on the St. Croix County board for District 2. So.
Oh, okay. And your brother's name is?
Sean Anderson.
Okay. So he won't be having a say in any of the resources your office might get, huh?
No, we've already talked about that, and he would recuse himself on those votes. I don't think technically there'd be any ethical violation because it doesn't put money in his pocket, but just even on the optics of it, it's just probably not a good idea for him to be.
Sure. Okay. Well, so let's start with, obviously the district attorney's office. has to have a strong relationship with police, with the judiciary, and even the people on the other side, defense attorneys. You and I are on opposite sides on cases from now and then. So how do you, that plea bargaining that goes on, it sometimes gets a bad rap, but what kind of role do you see that playing if you were to become the district attorney?
Pretty much the same role it does now. Plea bargaining is an essential function of the criminal justice system. If every single case went to trial, the system would collapse. There's just not the resources there. I think it's for sure less than 5%, probably closer to 3 to 2% of cases actually go to trial. And generally that's because the parties are able to reach an agreement that is good for the community, good for the defendant, and you don't have to go to trial if a defendant knows they're guilty and they get a fair outcome. The victim's happy, there's no reason to take those cases to trial.
And part of it comes from having, again, getting strong cases from the police that are ensured of a pretty high rate of success, and then making good charging decisions.
Yes, absolutely. The strength of the case is a big factor in what goes to trial because, even if a defendant knows they're guilty, if you don't have the facts to back it up, there's not a huge incentive for them to take a plea deal. So the stronger the case, the less likely it's going to go to trial for sure.
Right. And the other reality is that people think, well, we should be prosecuting them all to the hilt and throw them all in jail. We don't have the resources for those kind of incarceration rates. And so the vast majority of the people that are convicted of first-time offenses aren't going to jail.
Right. And not only do we not have the resources, that obviously or oftentimes isn't what's best for the community, is going as hard as you can, charge as many, get the longest sentence. A lot of times what's best is we have a great diversion program in St. Croix County, and I was recently appointed the head of the Veterans Diversion Program, which has the same goal. You want to give these people the opportunity to avoid a criminal conviction, but they have to earn it. They have to get alcohol counseling if they need that, maybe domestic violence counseling, maintain sobriety, maintain crime-free. And at the end of the agreement, maybe a year, 2, 3 years, if they've complied. And these are people who are low risk from the start. They have to do an evidence-based assessment to make sure they're low risk. Then they can avoid that criminal conviction, avoid those lifelong consequences that might prevent them from getting a job and being a productive member of society.
So with the prevalent use of plea bargaining, is there a temptation for overcharging, especially in situations like domestic disputes, where if you start out at a disorderly conduct, which is a Class B misdemeanor, you don't have a lot of place to go but down from there. So do you think that that's one area where maybe overcharging occurs, or is there other areas, or do you just not see it as a phenomenon at all?
I don't really see it in our office. I'm sure there's offices that maybe do that as a strategy. I don't think that's the right way to go about things. I charge cases for what I think they're worth, what I can prove, what the defendant actually committed. An example is everybody who's had a prior conviction for marijuana, we could charge them with felony marijuana. We just don't do that because we don't want to charge people with marijuana with felonies unless it's huge quantities or they're dealing or something like that. So we have the ability to do that, but we don't because that wouldn't be just.
Right. Well, and to see somebody with a marijuana conviction, it's usually their third or fourth charge because they've already had deferred prosecution or a reduction to a county ordinance or something along those lines, right?
That's right. And actually a lot of marijuana arrests we never see in the district attorney's office because the city police just refer them for municipal tickets. Okay. Yeah, if somebody has a criminal conviction for marijuana, they've usually probably had several arrests for marijuana.
So now, the fact that you've been in the county for 4 years and you see some of the policies, whether it's policies involving law enforcement, the judiciary, are there just generally policy decisions that you would change if you became the DA? You would be the third DA in basically 5 years, right?
Yeah, so no, there's not really any big ones. There's nothing that stands out now that I think, as soon as I win, if I win, I'm going to change this immediately. There's always room for improvement, and I have a lot of ideas for that. And I might, Niskis, the current district attorney, my boss, is supporting me, and he's ready to retire. So he's letting me start some of my initiatives now that I think will improve how we do things in the county. I'm working on creating.
Can you give us some examples of those initiatives?
Sure. So I've actually, about 6 months ago, started creating an elder abuse task force, and I've gotten buy-in from the larger agencies in the county to assign investigators to it. And these investigators will specialize in elder abuse because you have unique challenges. You have victims with dementia or maybe close to death. So things have to move quickly. You have to do things like recording the victim interviews. There's unique laws that can make what would be a misdemeanor a felony because of the person being a vulnerable adult. I've also been working, and I recently presented to the Community Justice Collaborating Council on what can we do to better help those defendants with mental illness. Because unfortunately we've seen a lot of those lately, and they come in on arrest on a new charge, they get released, there's no services in place because they're not on probation or supervision, they get rearrested because of their mental illness, and it's just a cycle until they get on probation. So recently I invited the Department of Health and Human Services to present to our office on what kind of resources are available that we could offer these defendants, working with the defense attorneys. And one of them is a great program called the Community Support Program, which they have social workers, psychologists, they can provide medications. And if these defendants are willing to sign a release, we can make sure that they're compliant with their medication and try to get them stabilized rather than just waiting until they're on probation.
Okay. And then thereby reducing the workload for the probation department.
Probation, law enforcement, yes, absolutely.
Okay. So what is the role, or how do you see, what's your perspective on the district attorney's role in decreasing crime and increasing safety?
Well, it's kind of like policies like that I was talking about, like on trying to get people services as soon as we can. Trying to have proactive policies like that, because a district attorney's office could just wait for a case to come in, prosecute it, and then it's out. It's not your problem anyway. Wait for the new one to come in, prosecute it, not your problem anymore. But I think a good district attorney should constantly be thinking about how can we improve things, how can we improve the community for the future, and that's what I really want to do. And the past two district attorneys have done a great job with that. Rick Johnson started the diversion program. Mike Niskis expanded it to the veterans diversion program, and they've both been proactive in trying to make the criminal justice system and in St. Croix County work better.
Okay. Other ideas then with regard to increasing public safety?
So there's this might be so much public safety, but it's another idea as far as improving how we do things. Another thing I want to do is there's nonprofits that provide therapy dogs for DA's offices, and there's other offices in the county that have done that. And when you have those tough cases, like the hardest that we deal with, or one of them at least, is child sex assaults,
right,
or really any sex assault, and you have these victims having to come and testify in front of a jury, that's intimidating for any victim. But you can have a therapy dog sit up with them. They can kind of pet the dog and relax somewhat, so that's another thing I want to do. But it's constantly evolving, the criminal justice system, and the idea is to be proactive and not reactive.
I'm going to get into the area of policing, and just because of the recent news, racial injustice and so forth. But I remember my time in a prosecutor's office, which was over 3 decades ago, and the importance of, I attended weekly, there was a meeting with the police officers and how they were doing cases and general policy stuff rather than talking about specific cases. But does your office have anything like that where you meet with either the sheriff's department or Hudson PD?
There's the chiefs meetings where all the chiefs meet, and Mike Niskis will go to those from time to time. But probably what's more along with what you're talking about is the Public Protection Subcommittee of the County Board, or the Community Justice Collaborating Council, and those have people from every aspect of the criminal justice system involved, judges, defense attorneys, prosecutors, people from Department of Health and Human Services. And the goal of those is to also, what can we be doing to improve what we're doing? And I think our county does a really good job about trying to be proactive, trying to constantly be thinking about how we can do things better.
We've been hearing lots of talk about defund the police. It's been kind of a motto or anthem and everything. Do you see the need for major police reform in St. Croix County or in parts of St. Croix County?
No. Improvement, yes. I mean, things can always improve. Nobody's perfect. No agency is perfect. Police reform isn't a bad thing, but if you're talking about police reform and the answer some people come up with is defund the police, I don't think that's the answer. I don't think any civilized society can function without a professional police force. But given what happened in Minneapolis, I don't see our agencies saying, that happened in Minnesota, not our problem. What I've seen is our agencies taking a hard look at their policies to make sure that things aren't outdated and trying to prevent something like that from happening here. Sheriff Knudsen recently spoke at the CJCC meeting. He talked about all the use of force continuum. Chokeholds, for example, aren't trained in Wisconsin. So I think Wisconsin is probably a little bit ahead of the curve in a lot of respects. I've spoken with Chief Willems. They've taken a deep dive into their policies. They've enacted a study. They're incorporating a study. It's called 8 Can't Wait into their policies, and that's based on evidence on what kind of reduction in use of force and how that can reduce things going sour when police have interactions with law enforcement. So I think our law enforcement are taking active steps to try to make sure we don't have those kinds of things happening. And I haven't seen it be a problem in my over 4 years at St. Croix County. I haven't seen disparate treatment or a case where I thought, that maybe this wouldn't have happened if this defendant wasn't a minority. I'm just not seeing that.
It probably not in the last 4 years, or even have you, some of your colleagues, your boss has got 30 years plus experience as well. Has there been much in St. Croix County or ever with an officer stepping over the line and actually being prosecuted instead of being on the side of prosecution?
As far as race goes, as far as racism?
Well, just in misconduct in office, I guess, if you will.
There's been officers charged, and no agency has a perfect group of police officers. If you get a big enough group, there's going to be somebody who makes a mistake. So that happens, and the key is that they're held accountable. And if they're charged, then that's justice, and then they can go through the criminal justice process like everyone else. And if they're convicted, they're convicted. And if not, that's how the justice system works.
Has anybody been bringing up studies or pointing out, big, great disparities in the statistics based on race, whether it's your office or cases being brought to your office?
No. And if there was those numbers out there, if anyone's watching this, send them to me by email. You can contact the DA's office. I just don't think it's out there. I was speaking with Chief Willems from Hudson, and they ran their numbers, and they came up with, I think, 1.5% of their charges, citations are involving minorities, and we have a greater percentage of minorities than that in St. Croix County. So I don't think there's any numbers backing up any sort of disparate treatment. If there are, point them out to us, because we would want to address it.
Okay. And you don't see, well, then moving on, as far as the role of the prosecutor is to help police enforce the law and then introduce them to the judicial ability to, whether it's punishment, retribution, rehabilitation, etc. So you're kind of that middle ground there to take it from where the act's being committed to then the correction is being made. So, but the legislature always likes to change the laws or make themselves look like they're doing something to get tough on crime. Specifically, I think the one area that gets at least one piece of legislation every year, every session is drunk driving. Obviously, we'd prefer to have no drunk drivers, but it has been something I've seen in my lifetime change from a 0.15 BAC now down to a 0.08. And but the one thing that still hasn't changed is first offense is still non-criminal. But what do you think with regard to legislation that comes out of Madison and how it impacts a prosecutor?
I mean, we have to adapt on the fly. You know, when there's a lot of legislation that gets voted on, not all of it passes. So you just got to wait and see what passes. And when it does, that's the new law of the land, and you got to apply the new law. And sometimes it's major, sometimes it doesn't change much about how we do things. The big one that changed recently, what like you were talking about, relatively recently, was all OWI force became a felony. And if you have an OWI fourth and you're convicted since that law took effect, it's now a lifetime license revocation. You can apply for reinstatement after 10 years, but that was a big deal. A lot of defendants, you know, are a lot less likely to, or a lot less willing to plead guilty when they know that they're going to lose their license for life. It's a tough pill to swallow. So you just have to adapt when those laws come down.
Yeah, but what kind of impact does that have then on you as a prosecutor when they make those type of penalties that make it difficult for pleas to happen?
I mean, it can make it harder, but like I said, the defendants don't really want to plead to an OWI-4 anymore, but the law is the law. We don't have any discretion to do anything else. Even if the judge ordered, you know, I'm just going to revoke your license for a year, the Department of Transportation is going to do it for life.
Okay.
So it is what it is, and we apply the law that's on the books.
Oh, what do you feel about that? Do you think the legislature in Wisconsin has overstepped its bounds or not in its limits it's placed on either prosecutorial or judicial discretion?
As a prosecutor, I don't like to lose my discretion because I think I'm fair, just, and have integrity, and I'm going to do what I think is best on every given case. And I don't think judges like losing their discretion because a lot of cases are so unique. Every case is so unique. And that's why as prosecutors, we don't have set in stone policies. We might have guidelines on how we do things on any given case to have consistency. So I don't think any prosecutor or judge likes to lose their discretion. But when the law is passed, the law is passed.
Right. Well, one of the areas that is a big debate in the news and nationally is decriminalization of marijuana. So we're talking about the impact that the legislature can have. I mean, if they were to do that one thing, that would free up a lot of resources for other areas. Is that something that you would consider a positive change for criminal justice system in Wisconsin?
I think the marijuana law is good as it is good right now because, like I said, we're not charging people with felony marijuana just because we can. We're not charging everybody who comes in with a marijuana charge with a crime. You kind of have to screw up quite a bit to end up with a marijuana criminal conviction. But I've seen a lot of big cases that start with marijuana. You know, an officer pulls somebody over, they smell marijuana, and then they find a pound of meth and a handgun. You know, those kind of cases happen. And I'm not sure how that would change if marijuana was decriminalized.
Well, how about meth? That's been a problem in St. Croix County for over a decade. It's waxed and waned as far as peaking in case. At one time we were leading the state in meth cases. But just simple possession of meth being a felony, what's your feeling on that? Is that another area where your discretion is taken away, or are you in prosecuting those? What other lesser included, and how can you be creative in that regard?
So I don't have any qualms about methamphetamine or heroin being felonies. I think they're both extremely insidious drugs. Methamphetamine is a huge problem in St. Croix County, but we can be creative. Just because somebody is an addict and maybe has a small amount of methamphetamine doesn't mean they're going to end up a convicted felony. Similar to our diversion program, we do it with felonies too, where maybe somebody gets pulled over, a small amount of methamphetamine, they have a marijuana or methamphetamine pipe, little to no prior history. We'll do a diversion on the felony for maybe 3 or 4 years and probation on the misdemeanor. So they're under 2 forms of supervision. We try to get them treatment, and if they are able to take advantage of that, stay crime free, they can avoid that felony conviction. But so just because somebody gets addicted to those substances and gets caught doesn't mean they're going to end up a felon. But there's a lot of problems that come from methamphetamine and heroin. A lot of our property crimes are addicts trying to get money to fuel their addiction. So we do take those seriously, and they are much different than marijuana, I think, in everybody's eyes, police, prosecutors, judges, due to how addictive they are. But I think we have a good way of dealing or working with addicts to try to help them avoid those felonies.
All right. Well, in St. Croix County, I don't know how many years it's been that they've had a drug treatment court. It was one of the pilot ones in the state, and now it's kind of a major aspect to cases. Who qualifies for a drug treatment court, and do you see the role of drug treatment court expanding, staying the same, or getting smaller if you were a district attorney?
Pretty much who qualifies for drug treatment ends up getting into drug treatment. I haven't heard of or seen any issue with, we would like to take this person, but we just don't have the capacity to do it. So far that hasn't been a problem. Those who qualify, they have to be high risk. They have to have failed through treatment before.
So first-time possession is not a drug treatment type of.
No, it's pretty much, this person has exhausted every single second chance that they have gotten, and this is it. They're going to end up in prison, or they're going to complete drug court. So it's a huge carrot and stick for the people in drug court. It's highly intensive. They meet regularly. That's another one where there's a defense involved, law enforcement, prosecution, overseen by a judge. It's a great program.
Okay. And would you see it as expanding, staying the same, or if there's overcapacity there and resources needing to be, would you reduce the program?
I think if we needed more resources, then we should try to get more resources. I don't think we should turn people away from those kind of programs just because there's no room. I mean, there's always options. We could have a second judge on it, second group meeting. So I don't think, unless there's no other option, that we should turn people away just because we can't fit them in.
Okay. Any other policies, or well, let's just ask you this, any other issues about the campaign that you've noticed? This isn't the first time that you've been interviewed and everything. Are there other issues unique to St. Croix County that you think need to be addressed?
I don't think so. I think we touched on a lot of them already. The methamphetamine is a problem in a lot of counties. Fortunately, that's our problem versus heroin, because heroin has all the overdoses. You can overdose on meth, basically, if somebody takes so much that they have a heart attack. But if I had to choose between heroin and meth, I guess, strange to say, I'm glad we have a meth problem over heroin. But there's not really terribly unique issues facing St. Croix County that other counties don't face. We have a little bit unique problems given that we're a border state. We have a lot of extraditions. We have a lot of defendants who flee or don't stay, come back to court, and then we have to extradite them from Minnesota. Witnesses for jury trials that if they're in Minnesota, it's a longer process to get them subpoenaed to come here. Another problem that's facing all of Wisconsin is assistant district attorney turnover. In St. Croix County, I'm the second most tenured assistant district attorney in the office, full-time district assistant.
And that's quite a bit different. It wasn't too long ago, I remember that assistant DAs in St. Croix County had an average of about 25 years experience. So what happened there?
I think it was the early 2000s. The raises stopped. The raises have to be approved every 2 years by the um, legislature, and if they're not approved in the budget every 2 years, assistant DAs don't get raises. And starting salary now, I think, is 49,000, and coming out of law school with $100,000 plus in debt, a lot of assistants end up coming in, getting experience, and moving on.
All right. So yeah, there is the allure of you can get a lot of jury trial experience in a short period of time. But what is where does it cap out? You know, the assistant DAs. I mean, do they continue to get raises on through 20 years experience, 25, 30? Where
I,
do
I
they
think
cap?
I think the cap is a little over $100,000, that's a great salary, but can you get there is the question. Because if you have 5 budget cycles where the legislature doesn't approve pay raises, which I think has happened in the early 2000s, you're going to have a lot of assistant DAs. You're going to have leaving the office for salaries where you can.
Well, it happened not just in prosecutors, but also the judges. I think
Judges and public defenders also.
yeah, the judges in Wisconsin have fallen about 20,000 a year behind their Minnesota counterparts, and they used to be comparable. So
I actually testified at the Joint Finance Committee about this very issue, and I testified with the district attorney from Barron County that there's no reason assistant district attorneys and assistant public defenders shouldn't be on the same pay scale, and both, when they get hired, be able to count on those pay raises.
okay. So is there any other, again, experience that we haven't touched on that you wanted to make sure that folks knew that maybe set you apart from your opponent?
Well, I've been very active in the district attorney's office, apart from just prosecuting cases. So I've talked about the Veterans Diversion Program. Mike Niskis has put me in charge of that. The elder abuse. Mike is also, he's supporting me. So he's planning on me taking over. For about the last year, he's been preparing me to take over as the next district attorney. I've been attending department head meetings, the CJCC meetings, public protection meetings. He's been talking to me about the budget. I was involved heavily in the last hiring decision of the assistant district attorney. So I'm intimately familiar with the county, the office now, and I'm ready to hit the ground running.
So how many assistants are there in St. Croix County?
There's the district attorney and 7 assistant district attorneys. One of those is Frank Collins, who is not full-time, and he's paid by the county. He does all our juvenile caseload.
Okay, so there's 6 that are paid by the state, then 6 assistant DAs?
Yes.
And of those 6, you said you have the second most seniority at this point?
Yes.
Okay, all right, very good. Well, Karl, thanks a lot for coming on the show and giving us a little more insight into your background and to your qualifications, as well as, why you're running. And let's just end with that one. Why should the voters vote for you?
I'm committed to St. Croix County. I live in Holton, so I want to make the community I live in as safe as possible. When I came to St. Croix County, I knew I wanted to stay here. I never updated my resume. I never updated my LinkedIn. My LinkedIn still said when I started my campaign that I was a law student. And my buddy from law school said, hey, you might want to update your LinkedIn. But it just never entered my mind because I'm not out there trying to find new jobs. I like where I am, and I'm committed to continuing to fight for justice for county residents.
Excellent. Well, Karl Anderson, candidate for district attorney on the Republican ticket. The election is August 11th, so folks should remember that day for the primary. And at that point, we'll know who the Republican candidate is. There is no Democratic candidate. So from there, it should be pretty smooth sailing. So good luck in the primary, Karl. And I want to thank our viewers for watching another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Jamie Johnson. Keep watching.